All right, folks, the Honourable Minister of Finance, Dr. Nigel Clarke, says the British government has pumped just under $10 million into the investigation of activities that fraud hit Stocks and Securities Limited. Joining us this morning is development economist and our good friend, Dr. Chris Stokes. Dr. Stokes, good morning and welcome to Smile once again, sir. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Good morning. Good to see you. And Simone, how are you? I'm not seeing you, but I'm...
Hi, Doc. How are you?
So first we heard that they had to pay the folks at SSL and we, the taxpayer, would pay it. Then we heard, no, don't go so. They have money to pay them. And now we hear right. 10 million to help with the investigation. So that 10 right. million, when you say help, is what? To pay them, to help in what? What is this help? What does help mean here?
Yes, I think it's important to back up a little bit. It's in the country's interest to resolve the SSL issue, to see what went wrong at the regulatory level, to the 8,000 depositors with the 30 billion to make sure that those funds remain safe, and to carry out a thorough investigation of any alleged fraud that happened there. This is in the public interest. As small as SSL is, it's important for the country. This is going to cost money. And that money has to come from somewhere, right? The public mood in Jamaica, and we saw it recently a couple months ago in the United States, is not for private people to benefit when the company is profitable, and then the public and the ordinary man pay for it when it fails. So that is a non-start. All right, we can't do that again. So the government, I believe, understands this. So the question is, where does the money come from to continue the operation so the folks with accounts there can continue to be serviced and the investigation can continue? One of the sources is actually, I believe it's about £50,000 in a grant from the UK, which will go to, it's about $10 million that will go towards this. So my experience with this is that it's welcomed, but frankly, it's not a ton of money for what I'm sure they have to get done.
And grant means they give it to us. We don't have to give anything back. And right, Doc?
No, right. So when you see the word grant, that is the old time meaning. But we also see in many cases conditionalities or to be used in particular purposes. I have not seen the details of that, but I would not be extraordinarily surprised if one of the conditions was that these funds were to be used for some particular thing. For example, not to pay somebody, but to
help with the forensic audit.
Yeah.
Right. And this is not anomalous, Dr. Stokes. I mean, there are facilities that allow for this kind of collaboration or partnership or assistance with other countries, correct?
Happens all over the world. Right? And doesn't alarm me.
So in March, Dr. Clarke signed an agreement with Kroll Associates from the United Kingdom. Does this 10 million have anything to do with?
You see, and so these are among the questions. Does it have anything to do with British citizens that may have been affected? Does it have to do with funding this particular company? And for example, sometimes you get loans, for example, from the Chinese, and part of the condition is that you hire Chinese firms. This is normal.
Yeah.
This is normal, right? So there's nothing nefarious in any of that. So the bigger question is, what in Jamaica we do not have a system to resolve an effective system to resolve the failure of investment institutions, not deposit taking. We have the JDIC for that, and it's celebrating 25 years this year. Is that sufficient? But what this has revealed is that we really do not have an effective system of resolving, resolving deposit taking, but non-deposit taking financial institutions. And I think that's one of the learnings that has to come out of this.
Why do you say that, Doc?
Because here we are. No, because SSL has failed, right? And an investigation needs to happen. And we're actually innovating as to how we pay for it. It's not like if a bank fails, then you have JDIC, right? We have to now be innovating. So we have to be saying, okay, let's take some, the proceeds of crime. Maybe there's some funds there. The FSC itself had some funds that we could use to go towards that, but it is not integrated and formalized in the system. And I think that has been revealed in this entire process.
Yeah, forgive my ignorance, Chris, because I think earlier you said that they have to keep running the business for people who would have deposited their money, right? If that is so, how were they being paid before all of this happened? And why is
that's a very good question. Okay, so the temptation is to say, okay, it's a going concern, which by the way, whether or not it's a going concern is part of the investigation that is going on, right? Was it really profitable? But now that it is, so the idea is that the firm would make profits and you'd use that to pay staff and so on.
Right.
Understand that a chunk of additional costs have been added onto it. So what revenue that, so they have a fairly large portfolio that is generating some revenue that must go towards continuing to run the operation. A ton of costs have been put on top of it, which is essentially the government's responsibility. It's not SSL's responsibility to investigate itself or to pay for that. That's not in law or in practice. So who pays for that additional cost? But I do not think, and I've heard it, but I do not think that the government is simply paying the salaries and running the operations from its own funds and not using any profits that it may continue to earn. And again, when we hear these things, we have to ask the second question, because we jump to conclusions and like Simone just did. What does that mean? What's that second level question? So
are we getting second level answers, or are we just not asking the second level questions?
I think we need to ask the second level questions. So that for example is something that we need to clarify clear, just make clear. What is the profitability of the institution now? Is it able to carry its staff as a going concern? And then what additional costs are being incurred or being imposed, and how are we paying for that? And I think that is something certainly Dr. Clark is well within his communication capacity to explain very, very clearly.
Ought he to do so, Dr. Stokes? Do you think he's obligated to answer those questions?
I think he's obligated and he's quite willing. I mean, but we have to ask, we and the fourth estate need to ask the specific question about this.
Yeah, I know this is billions of dollars and that will take work to go through everything. But are you surprised that we're not further into the investigation? Yeah, Ms. Panton, she was locked up, it seems like moons ago now. And we haven't, in my opinion, we haven't moved past that. I'm not hearing, well, John is involved to RG and is also involved. I hear that so on, so on, so on. So are you surprised that we haven't got a little deeper just yet?
It depends on the jurisdiction from which I'm speaking. If I were speaking from, and let me not thought, another jurisdiction investigating it, I would expect some preliminary report that can stand scrutiny. The way investigations and the justice system moves in Jamaica, I can say without fear of contradiction that it is not surprising that we haven't heard anything. Right? And we could have another conversation about various investigations that have happened in the past, some of which up to now we don't know what happened. Right? So I'm not surprised, but the public needs to keep pressuring the matter. We need to, not because you have money in it, but because it has an implication for wherever your money may be and how we run the country.
When you're outside looking in, and you use the word jurisdiction, so when you're in another jurisdiction looking in, and I have no issue that if you can't work things out, you go for help. I have no issue with that. But how we look to the people outside and say, well, them thief money and we have to send for Simone all the way up foreign to come help, we find the money, and how we look to those people?
No. I get that. But everybody's in a glass house, bro. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's in a glass. There's no way you can go that hasn't suffered from this. What is important is from that perspective, is not that you have an issue, but how you resolve the issue, how quickly, what are the mechanisms,
Yep.
and the process. And this is what we need to do. So it's not, And it's like, it's like, you coach for those situations in sport, for example. So when this happens, it's not a good thing, but this is how you respond.
Yeah.
Right?
So, Doc, let me ask you, no, I mean, this would be a shame to waste this crisis, right? You mentioned the gaps that exist and the time it's taking to do this. I don't know if it's because of the unprecedented nature of this. I don't know if we've ever really seen anything like this before. I mean, I don't know if you can compare.
Yeah, a couple of things.
FinSac,
Let me give you an example. In the United States,
maybe, I don't know if you can compare FinSac, but I'm really saying, what are the learnings that we can take out of this?
Yeah, and I think we're all learning. So what we don't want to go back to is a FinSac case where the government spent 40% of GDP on it, although the persons whose savings were grateful, clearly. But let's look quickly at the United States. The United States developed the economy regulatory system. Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic failed in May. In both of those cases, there was no taxpayer money used to do the bailout. In one case, JP Morgan took over First Republic. And in the case of Silicon Valley Bank, they did an interesting thing. The JDIC insurance is $250,000. They just waived that. So even if you have $10 million, it's insured. So even the United States had to be innovating around the crisis that they faced so as not to have the government or public money bail out folks. And I think in this crisis, we need to learn from this. What is there an expanded role of the JDIC? We're talking about the Twin Peaks model, where we're bringing all financial institutions under one section and customer service, customer complaints kinds of things on another. So we are learning. How quickly can we move to create legislation, put infrastructure in place is yet to be seen. But my sense is that the crisis is not being wasted, even though it is not being resolved as quickly as we would like to see.
Good to see you, my friend. God bless you and your family.
Always. Blessings.
Legislation and timely in the same sentence, I'm not sure that's a thing, but we will see as time goes on. Development economist Dr. Chris Stokes with us this morning. Coming up next.
Limited buses for persons with disabilities. That's on the horizon now. So Sim will have that interview when we come back. Stay with us, please.